Heavy is the crown Man City have worn that Arsenal will need to bleed it out to claim. But in the end, they have gone one step closer with their efforts at the Etihad, crawling to 98 minutes on Sunday with a performance that will not be forgotten. And hopefully it has not left them in pieces. It is difficult when breaking the habit of finishing second, trying to reach the top to find somewhere I belong. But as Arteta asks himself what I've done and what more he can do, last weekend could be the catalyst that us fans are not left feeling numb again come May of next year. This is the Arsenal News Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal News Show. Joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you as always for joining me and making this a part of your morning routines. It is incredibly appreciated. I hope you've had a fantastic start to your week. Indeed, it has been stressful for me over the last couple of days, but we are settling in. There's less boxes, as you can see behind me. There's still not all of them. There is some more still that we need to sort out, but kitchen's done. Living room nearly done. Ordered a sofa yesterday. That was exciting. And the study is kind of taking some more shape as well. But it's still going to be a few months before you see the efforts of the real work that's going on. But I'm looking forward to that. I hope that some of you may have got the hints of this morning's intro. Let us know in the comments section how many you got, how many you spotted, and for those that aren't fans of Lincoln Park, you will have no clue what on earth just happened. But I can tell you that they were unreal yesterday. Absolutely unreal. And if you went yesterday to the O2 to watch them, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, because it was so good, as you can see. Good morning. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Do drop a like before you do anything else and help us on our way to 1K every single day on the channel. Good morning to those joining us live in the chat box. Black Shine at Agoke, Colin, good morning to you, to Damien Peekahoo, Rich, Paul, James, Olawale, Luke, we've got Stephen, Mark, we've got Adarile, Amira, Grantley Poos, Loga, Maximius, NSW, Paul, Quasi. Thank you to you all. You are all incredibly appreciated. So thank you for that. It is incredibly humbling, as always, to be sitting here chatting with you. Let's, without further ado, Lo, jump into today's stories, shall we? Let's go to a transfer line, believe it or not, to kick things off, which is not something that we've had to discuss. But reports coming out of Germany over the last 24 hours have suggested that Arsenal are reportedly one of the teams that are interested in signing Bayer Leverkusen's wonder kid, Florian Wirtz. Of course, he's been linked with all of the big clubs, as you very well know by now. But Arsenal are said to be one of those sides that are very keen on potentially pursuing the German international in the summer. We do know that Real Madrid, Barcelona are two other big teams, of course, interested. Manchester City, of course, as well. It's going to be very, very difficult, I think, for anyone to get their hands on Wirtz, especially when a club like Real Madrid are involved in any kind of negotiations for the player. But you never know. It could be a deal that sees Arsenal land the mystery German. Remember that? Goodness me. But yeah, anything's possible, I guess. And that's what Arsenal are going to be hoping when it comes to potentially landing one of the best players in the world. It was League Cup action, and that takes the focus and the bulk of today's show. There was games yesterday. Aston Villa beating Wycombe Wanderers 2-1 away from home. Chelsea winning 5-0 against Barrow. Manchester City narrowly squeezing past Watford 2-1, and Leicester City drawing 0-0 with Walsall in their game, which was obviously perhaps not. It's another indication, isn't it, of just how poor Leicester City are right now. But I suppose, even though they've gone through on penalties, but I suppose what it does is it goes to show, again, just it's just not worth it for these teams that are fighting relegation to be in these competitions at all, really. But they still managed to go through to the next round. Games on tonight, of course, include Arsenal against Bolton, Liverpool will take on West Ham, and Newcastle are at home to AFC Wimbledon. Our game, as mentioned already, is indeed tonight, 7:45 kickoff at the Emirates Stadium. Ethan Nwaneri, the poster man of Arsenal's kind of graphic ahead of this fixture, giving a huge hint, I think, that we can see that Ethan Nwaneri is likely to start this game and make his first over 21s, because, of course, he's only made starts for them. No starts so far for the Arsenal senior side in a competitive fixture. This should be the first time that we see in a competitive game from the start Ethan Nwaneri get a chance to play. Mikel Arteta did indeed face the media going into the game against Bolton this weekend. Just to give you kind of a bit of a background, I suppose, on Bolton and what they're doing currently in League One. They were considered to be one of the more likely sides to go up this season from League One to the Championship. However, they've started the season very poorly. Just 2 wins, 1 draw, and 3 losses leave them down in 19th place out of 24 sides. And at the moment, facing potential worries and woes regarding relegation. So, yeah, that is not a good place for them to be right now, Bolton. And a League Cup game against Arsenal could even be seen as something of a distraction, and certainly something where Arsenal will look to try and rotate their side. Mikel Arteta, though, as I mentioned, did speak to the media on yesterday morning. He was asked about the recovery from the game against Manchester City, and he said, yes, fully recovered. It's like a normal game. It was obviously a very emotional game in the end, but they are all in different ways to get the game that we played on Sunday. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. He was asked about his emotions about the rivalry, and he says, I don't know. It's part of football and part of sport. After the game, all that goes away and we move on. That's it. About the reaction of how Arsenal played, he says, we had to play that game because we had to play it. In the first 10 or 15 minutes, we couldn't, 11 against 11, and then we got much better. And obviously, we're thrown into a very different context. Every team does it. City played with 30 seconds with 10 men, and look what they did. It's normal what they did for 30 seconds. We had to do it a different way. We learned from the past as well, because unfortunately, we've been in that situation 3 times. One was with Granit after 37, 38 minutes, and we conceded how many? Question mark. And it's true. Like, there can be no complaints really about how Arsenal played out the second half of the game at all. It was just what Arsenal needed to do. Arsenal absolutely had to approach the game in that fashion. There was no way they were going to get a result any other way. We've already got the lead, which is not something you have too often when playing at Man City's ground. And you add the defenders and the best defensive record in the division, of course, over the last couple of seasons to try and see it out. Sadly, it wasn't possible. And they did score right at the end with a lucky deflection that led to John Stones being able to kick the ball into the back of the net. But that's just the way it goes. And Arsenal still ended up with a point on the road in their trickiest away fixture of the season. He was asked about Trossard's red card, but he didn't really go into it at all. He just says, I gave the answer to that on the weekend. Talking about Wednesday and about availability of players, though, he says, I always prefer the facts than words or supposing things. So let's see who's available tomorrow, and then we can talk about dark arts or these things. Unfortunately, there will be a few players who are not available. Tomorrow you will find out as soon as I give the lineup. We have to wait on one of them. And that was a little concerning, because there was also question marks about kind of like injuries and things like that, and serious injuries, and kind of if there was any big injuries. And he was kind of, again, we will have to wait and see. And in terms of the players that came off at the weekend, both Bukayo Saka and Jurrien Timber came off against Manchester City and could be one of the people that he is talking about. If neither of them are in the squad, or one of them's not in the squad, that is obviously a bit of a concern. There could be hope that it's just because of rotation and rest, but there is obviously frustrations and worries that there is injuries worse than that. He was asked about Zinchenko, and he says, I think he will still be out for a few weeks, which I think was a bit of a surprise for many people, that Zinchenko will be missing again for quite a considerable period. And I think, again, maybe one of the reasons why Arsenal have refrained from offering him a brand new contract. Martin Odegaard as well, he gave an update on him, and he says, I think it will be a matter of weeks, but how long exactly, I cannot tell you. He was asked about if he'll play before the next international break in October, and he says, we might get a surprise, but I think it is unlikely. He was asked about Mourinho's influence on his approach to games, and he says, you learn a lot from all the top coaches, and you try to understand why they've been successful and what really touches that team that makes it special and consistent, especially at this level and the amount of games we play. You might have an idea of where the game will go, but if it goes in a different direction, do you have the ability to adapt and be happy to play that game? Because that is the level that we are in. Of course, he was compared quite heavily to Mourinho's approach to games with the parking of the bus, which is certainly what Arsenal did. There's no there's no dressing it up. That is what Arsenal did on Sunday, but ultimately they got their 2 goals from 2 good plays, and hopefully it will be not so much parking of the bus against Bolton and Leicester and Southampton and Bournemouth, but certainly more so attacking free-flowing football, which is what we are meant to expect from this team. Of course, he was asked about Ethan Nwaneri and Miles Lewis-Skelly. He says, I'm very proud of them. They are dealing with a situation that probably they didn't expect. They have had the chance to play in 2 of the most historic and difficult grounds in the Premier League, and they both responded really, really well, which was absolutely great to hear. So that's kind of a roundup. You can read the whole interview, of course, as always, on the Arsenal website, and we always provide a live blog of these press conferences pre and post match on the football.london website. I want to give you kind of, because there's no chance at the moment for me to do these preview shows. Hopefully there might be a chance for one on Friday ahead of the Leicester game. I have to wait and see. Of course, it depends on how the internet continues to hold out for us, but it's going all right. And do give me your feedback about how things are until I can get all the internet properly installed and sorted. But I wanted to give you kind of where I am. It was really hard to choose this team. It's shocking how many players there are question marks about at the moment, and how many few players. And it's not even like just senior players. Like, I was looking into Josh Nichols, who I thought impressed during preseason. He's not played for the youth side for the last 2 weeks, so I can only assume that he's out injured. Aidan Heaven, who of course also played during preseason, he's currently out injured as well. It seems he wasn't at the open training session before the Atalanta game, and we haven't seen him in any of kind of the young squads whatsoever. David Raya, of course, I don't think will play, but Neto is cup tied. And as well as that, what we've seen is Tommy Setford has not been available. I think there's a chance we might see Alexi Rojas in this game. Of course, as well, Rojas was one of the 2 goalkeepers that joined, and Lucas Nygaard as well. But Lucas Nygaard, I think, is also injured. So Alexi Rojas might be the goalkeeper for this game. If not, and Raya is okay, Raya will probably play. It could be Jack Porter, though. But Porter, of course, played. We've had Ransom play. We've had Okonkwo as well. We've got a lot of youth goalkeepers. I was trying to go through kind of by elimination. The goalkeeper one is really hard. So I've gone with kind of a guess of Rojas in this example. He was one of the players that came away with the team on the preseason tour, so that's why I've lent towards him. The back line, I don't know who goes at right back, so I've just continued with Ben White. I know he had an issue, and that's why he didn't start against City, but he may need to just play right back this game. We don't have... Timber obviously came off with a bit of an issue, so I can't pick Timber. That's what's mad. Saliba, of course, I think will be fine to play, and I think it's probably worth having a consistent presence. Kivior, of course, also is an obvious candidate for this game. Calafiori as well. I know he came off with cramp, I think it was, against Man City, but hopefully he'll be fine to play in this game. And I think again he needs another minute, but we don't know what Timber's situation. If Timber is fit, maybe he can play, but I am conscious of the load that he might indeed have to deal with. In midfield, Jorginho, of course, I expect to play this game with Miles Lewis-Skelly. I think Lewis-Skelly will, of course, get an opportunity to play as well. Ethan Nwaneri, I would be expecting to start this game. And then up top, we've got some interesting choices. Gabriel Jesus, of course, I'll be expecting to start this game. Raheem Sterling, of course, the other one. I haven't had a chance to change the picture from Havertz. I think Havertz will just come off the bench and score a hat-trick. So that's why Havertz is the 5-star pick for this one. But in reality, I just haven't had a chance to change the picture yet. And then at right wing, with no Saka potentially, you know, he might be being rested. I'd expect him to be rotated. Martinelli being given a rest as well. Trossard is, of course, suspended for this game. Cabia is, of course, the young 18-year-old that was on the bench for Arsenal against Spurs. You might remember his name and recognise his name, of course, from the Tottenham Hotspur North London Derby bench. Very exciting young player, very quick, very rapid right winger. The other option I had was playing Jesus on the right and playing Butler Oyedeji, who actually won the PL2 Player of the Month award and scored again at the weekend, got the 96-minute winner against Stoke. That is potentially another option that Arsenal could go with during this game, is use Butler Oyedeji, but I think that might be taking out too much. But this is kind of the strange one, isn't it? This is a very strange kind of decision that Arsenal have got to make in terms of who we're going to start, who we're going to play. And yeah, I guess we're going to have to wait and see what happens with the team. But maybe we'll go stronger. Maybe we'll go even more rotational as well for this game. It's also interesting, I think, worth pointing out, if you have a look at Chelsea's game against Barrow, of course, they won 5-0 in their fixture yesterday, and Nkunku, of course, started. But when you've got a squad that's as deep as them, and you're in a situation, of course, where you can start billions pounds worth of players just every single week, because that's how much they've spent on their squad at the moment. I'll just read you their team from the night. Jorgensen was in goal, Malagusta, Dizazi, Badia, Shil, Vega, Casadei, Dewsbury, Hall, Felix, Mudryk, Neto, and Nkunku. And we're always going to batter League Two side Barrow, even though Barrow are currently top of League Two, playing against Gillingham, of course, this weekend. Big game in the fourth tier of English football. But of course, they're going to start a very strong side. They could barely start any of their youngsters either. So it's not surprising that they went with a very strong team. And we have to rest players. We've got a very thin squad at the moment because we've got so many injuries. Erdegaard's out. Moreno is out. Tierney is out. Raya could be out. I think Partey and Rice probably need a rest. We might see Rice play this game, and Calafiori, if he's injured, Lewis Skelly goes at left back. Rice starts this game in midfield. That's something we could still see. Saka came off against City. Timber came off against City. Raya's got a problem. Ben White didn't start the game because of a minor knee issue. There's a lot of question marks, about the squads at the moment. I've probably even forgotten. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else I have forgotten in the squad who's also got. Tomiyasu is currently injured. Forgot about him. Anyone else in the team? Don't think so. So yeah, we have, and Neto is cup tied. There's another one. So that's just the reality. I don't really get the moaning about the Neto thing. Yes, Neto is cup tied, but the Raya situation. Raya would have played, I think, this game had he not had an issue against City. That's why I brought Rojas in for it. But it's a League One side. We should be able to play a youth goalkeeper and be okay for this one. But the Neto being cup tied is not an issue. You sign Neto as a goalkeeper to play, in dire circumstances, not to play the cup games. Rare, it's a goalkeeper. It's not like goalkeepers need the fitness side of rest that the outfield players do. So I don't really get the comedy or the criticism of that Neto signing. It doesn't really make too much sense, but we still need to kind of get any information about Raya's situation after he was seen limping out of the game against City with some bandaging around his right knee, I think it was. So yeah, Tierney's back in training, has been for a bit, but I don't think Tierney is yet fit to play. So I'm not expecting to see Tierney. Rich says, is El Neni injured? El Neni's gone, mate. El Neni is out of here. He went in the summer. So sorry to disappoint you, but yeah, it is really thin. We have absolutely left ourselves in a position of, not even left ourselves in a position. We're just really unlucky with injuries at the moment. We've had so many pile up on us and haven't got the protection. You can get the protection, though, that you need while surfing the net online with NordVPN, which brings you the best safety and security that you can expect from a service that you absolutely should be investing in. And you can get a significant discount off a 1 or a 2-year plan with NordVPN by going to nordvpn.com/Gooner to get yourself a significant discount off those plans with 4 months extra thrown in free on top of that too. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee if you're not happy with the service for whatever reason. If you're going on your travels, going on your holidays, you absolutely need a VPN so that you can digitally change your location on your laptop, your mobile, and indeed your tablet to hop back to the UK or wherever your country of origin may be so that you can access the things that you wouldn't be able to typically access elsewhere. Or if you're just based elsewhere, maybe you want to go on British Netflix or US Netflix and you want to get access to that through a VPN. Well, Nord is the way to go because it gives you all the benefits of the best VPN service that is available. All the information is down in the description as always. And the Bukayo Saka competition continues to go on courtesy of Football Prizes. Best of luck to all of you that are getting involved in that Bukayo Saka competition. An amazing opportunity to show off to your friends if you get your hands on what is definitely a very coveted piece of Arsenal memorabilia. But there are only less than a third even, of tickets available, and the competition's only been going for 2 days. So time is running out and tickets are selling fast. Link down in the description to the competition page. The early bird price, I think, is now expired and it's $3.95 a ticket. But all the best of luck to you that do get involved. Well, let's go to part 2 and your questions right after this. Okay, lovely stuff. Really looking forward to tonight's game. Looking forward to getting back to the Emirates, testing out the new commutes for me, of course, which is always something when you move house to see what the commute's like for your new place of work. And it just happens that my place of work is indeed the Emirates. So I'm looking forward to that and looking forward to seeing how quickly I get back as opposed to what it has been before. It used to take me like sometimes 2 hours to get back from the Emirates, and hopefully that will be significantly shorter now. So fingers crossed the new route turns out the way that we want. Right, let's go into the chat box and tackle some of your comments, shall we? Jason says, are we being compensated from Norway for Ødegaard's injury? Yes, we should be. If players are injured on international breaks, the footballing federations, I do believe, are required to pay the wages for the period that those players are out for. I'm not sure if it's just for competition tournaments, but the Nations League, of course, is what he was injured in. So Norway should, and quite rightly, should be paying Ødegaard's wages while that player is indeed out of those competitions, unless for whatever reason they're unable to, or Arsenal have kind of waived that. But I guess we'll have to wait and see on that one. Let's go to James says, I'm way too magnanimous. I am very magnanimous, James. I don't think you've used the word in the right context, but I appreciate the compliment. And says, Tom, that's what happens when you choose to trim your squad. The cards have been dealt, and with lads, I hope they come through. I mean, we say we've trimmed the squad. We had a stronger squad at the start of the season than the start of last season, with the players available to us, and of course with the promotion of players from the youth team as well. We have just been incredibly unfortunate with the injuries that we've sadly suffered. Like Mikel Arteta being injured in the first training session is mad. Of course, we've had players like Tomiyasu and now Zinchenko from the defensive unit missing. Timber's still recovering from this injury situation as well. Martin Ødegaard is now out injured. We've had Declan Rice missing through suspension. We're going to have Trossard missing through suspension tonight as well, which also makes things look a lot thinner. Also, Saka came off at halftime. Gabriel Jesus had an issue as well, again, at the start of the season. So we say we've trimmed the squad, but we actually haven't, because we promoted Miles Lewis-Skelly. We promoted Ethan Nwaneri into the group as well. We've got a stronger team that we had at the start of last season. So it's a reality of just the situation that unfortunately has happened to us. Not that we've dealt our own cards. At the end of the day, we have got the situation that we've got. And also it's worth pointing out that Man City and the clubs in that position as well typically tend to focus their squad around 18 to 19 players. And then there's like 6 or 7 really young players, of course, that are still coming through. It's very rare that you have 25 senior players. Only Chelsea do, and that's because they've got mental spending and silly recruitment strategies that have not worked in their favour. But if you want that, I'd question why, because it's just not worked out. Jabu says, knowing Mikel Arteta will be playing a full-strength squad with Nwaneri and Skelly and Sterling coming in, Saka, Jesus, Rice and Jorginho to play. I guess, Jabu, we'll have to wait and see if he proves you wrong. Maximir says, Tom, yesterday I was once again ridiculed by a Man City fan for being a fake Gooner just because I was Asian. I just asked him how it felt being made relevant as a club by a rich Asian family, and he blocked me. Of course, there's an irony in that. And I always maintain on this channel that whether you're a season ticket holder or whether you're a fan that gets up at silly o'clock in the morning over in Australia, you are just as much of a fan of Arsenal as one another. Just because anyone can attend games doesn't make them more of a fan than you are. Just because they can access games or have been drawn by luck to have been born here in the UK, it does not mean anything more than that. And we had some xenophobes, of course, come on the phone-in show earlier in the year, I think it was, or at the end of last year, that tried to explain that they think that a larger proportion of the fan base in the stadium should not be Arsenal fans. Hear this, but they should be English, is what they said, which is rather horrible, to be honest. But sadly, that is the brain-dead state of some of the fans that exist within this fan base, and the xenophobia that continues to exist amongst us, which is something hopefully will improve over time, but only through education, and sadly only by as well taking action against those that use that xenophobia in a pretty horrible way. Chris, there's just a thought. Should Haaland have been booked for delaying the restart when he threw the ball at Gabriel? This throwing of the ball at the back, I had someone in the comment section kind of compare it to a headbutt. I'm sorry, but it's just not the same. So it's pathetic. Like, don't get me wrong, it's absolutely pathetic, and it's cowardly and it's silly. But I'm so done with stuff like this. Like, yes, it's pathetic. Maybe he should be booked, but I'd rather that football was just in a better place overall, and things like this are just laughed at and ignored. I think Tim Stillman put it best, as I said in yesterday's show. So I'm not too fussed about that one. Rich says, Tom, do you think there's a reason for all these injuries, or is it just bad luck? It's just bad luck, mate. Like, it happens. Sometimes squads have huge injuries. I remember Liverpool under Jurgen Klopp lost loads of players and dropped out the title race completely and finished outside of the top 4 during one of their seasons. So it happens. I'm not expecting that to happen to Arsenal in such a significant way. I'm expecting Arsenal to still go ahead and continue to challenge. Like, without Moreno, without Odegaard, we've gone to the Etihads and we've still managed to pick up a point and nearly 3. So Arsenal's decision making is ultimately where we found ourselves, and unbeaten after 5 games, 3 wins, 2 draws, and of course beating Aston Villa away, beating Spurs away, and going to City and drawing is a brilliant start to the season. Amberley says, sadly, it's society. I hate seeing that sort of nonsense anywhere. Where you're born is nothing more than luck. Exactly. You can't control it. I hate when people put value on people because of something that is completely and entirely out of their control. That's where xenophobia and racism, etc., stems from. B Daddy says the good thing is now that we can do it to another team, then get a red card for it, then complain about more double standards. I think the irony that I've had a lot of conversations with people in the comment sections, people disagree with my take about Trossard. That's fine. If you think that Trossard was indeed completely unable to stop himself from kicking that ball, if you feel that, that's absolutely fine. But I had someone leave a comment to me yesterday. I'll read it to you, just to kind of give you a perspective of where I'm at. Came from Gerard in the comment section. He says, Arsenal can't take the referees out of the game. This came from the discussion yesterday where I talked about Arsenal need to take the referee out of the game. Arsenal need to win games in spite of the referee's existence, which is A, by just being good enough to take the game away from any contentious decisions, and B, not give the referees an excuse to make stupid decisions. Gerard says, Arsenal can't take the referee out of the game. That is impossible and unrealistic. There would always be instances where mistakes are made because nobody's perfect. I can't blame Trossard if he's playing to the whistle and he kicks the ball within a second of the whistle being blown. I said it's not that at all. You take the referee out of the game by finishing your chances, by not giving them a decision to make, and he shouldn't have booted the ball away. Gerard replied by saying, you sound like someone who doesn't play competitive sport. The kicking of the ball was within a second of the whistle being blown, which makes it impossible. If the referee wants to give a game to another team, a player cannot stop that. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, and we played a World Cup qualifier, which if we won, we would have made it to the World Cup, and 4 legitimate goals were disallowed. And even though the referee was banned for life, we failed to qualify. And I can give you many more instances where injustices like that have happened. To believe that players can take a game out of the referee's hands is just fantasy. I think, obviously, like in that example, for the record, that's very different. Like 4 legitimate goals being disallowed for reasons where the referee is then banned. Like, and I haven't even seen that example. I need to have a look into that. But that's different to Trossard kicking the ball away. And the point about when they say you sound like you don't play competitive sport, I said quite simply, you sound like someone who doesn't play elite level sport, because the ability to make a sub-second decision in a game is a regularity. Whether you're a goalkeeper that has to make a split-second save, whether you're a striker that needs to react to a pinged pass to you within a split second of receiving it and angle it into the back of the net, whether it's anticipating a tackle when a player tries to dribble past you, these are all things that footballers need to decide and make decisions upon within less than a second. Constantly. In football, we see decisions made by footballers that are made far less than the amount of time between the whistle being blown and Trossard kicking that ball. It happens all the time. Players have to make decisions within that split second of time. This is not me saying that I want to see Trossard sent off or any player sent off in these instances. I think referees should use their common sense in these situations and not send players off. But to use the argument that footballers don't make decisions within less than a second as an example of trying to say that Trossard had no choice but to kick the ball away in that example, it doesn't fly for me. because footballers do that all the time in every single game that they play. So I can't get on board with the whole amount of time it took between the whistle and Trossard kicking the ball. Also, the way that Trossard kicked the ball was not playing the ball out to Martinelli. I just don't see it. That's not the way that you kick the ball if you're an elite level footballer, to play the ball through to Martinelli, who's got free space on the left-hand side. It'll be a side-footed little pass out to the left, not booting the ball as hard as Trossard can. And although it wasn't going as far as he could, it's because he started to pull out of the action when he realised what was going on. But he didn't. He pulled out too late. Like, he pulled out too late, and the emotion of the moment overtook him faster than he could make the decision to not do it. Vanity says, non-football related, but did you hear James O'Brien's introduction when Nigel Farage was still in the studio? Yes, I did, and it was absolutely brilliant. Like, it was one of the best pieces of radio I have ever heard. Clive says, did you hear a rumour? The Premier League are considering banning set pieces. It's just too good for Arsenal, Clive. We're just too good at set pieces. They're going to have to do something about that. Arsenal just can't be this good at set pieces. It's just not allowed. They're going to have to change things. There's more than 1,000 of you watching. Please make sure, if you haven't done so already, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here, with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. Tizer says, clubs complained about our time wasting last year, and now Trossard gets booked 0.84 seconds after the whistle. The most Arsenal thing in the world, by the way, working out the exact time that it took. Rice for two rolls of the ball. Have the complaints influence refs to carding us quicker? I mean, Rice's first yellow is a yellow card. Trossard's first yellow is a yellow card. Like, we can have no complaints about the first yellows that those two players get when they get them, can we? Like, we just can't. Rice is an out-of-control sliding tackle that endangers the player. Trossard's is just a classic shirt pull that is always going to get you booked. So we can't have any complaints about the first yellows. We can definitely have complaints about the managing of games that referees have to decide to send players off for those moments. They shouldn't be sent off for those things. I only want to see players get booked for kicking the ball away if it is like so blatantly horrendous. I'm talking about, like, the player is genuinely in anger, like they've gone into a tackle, they've missed the ball, they're getting fed up, and they boot the ball into the stands. If it's a play, as you say, that close time-wise, I just don't think it is. I just don't think you should see players booked for these incidents, like Declan Rice's as well, the little tap of the ball. Yes, it's sad and pathetic, but it's not malicious. There's nothing malicious about those kicks, and I think that's the difference. It's just managing the game's emotion and state and atmosphere, and of course the consistency because of the Doku incident previous to that. But we're sitting here on Wednesday morning still talking about a decision from Sunday because we feel hard done by it. We feel frustrated by it, and we know that had we had 11 men on the pitch, we could have won that game compared to not having 11 men on the pitch. Sharky says, how can they use common sense during the Kovacic tackle last year because they don't want to kill the flow of the game, but cannot use the common sense for the Trossard situation? And this is a fair question. Like, you can't. It's the consistency. Like, we're going to continue to use this word, consistency, because that is what it is. It's the failure of consistency ultimately that leaves us here having these same conversations time and time again. Kieran says, I've just seen a tweet showing all 13 offences of delaying a restart because across our last 3 Premier League games, 5 by us, 8 by the opposition. I bet you cannot guess which 5 resulted in yellow cards. I haven't seen that. Please send that my way, Kieran. I would love to see it. Biko says, are you not surprised by how much the narrative shifts when Arsenal are involved? Liverpool were never under any pressure by the media to beat City at home. Neither did they do that when they won the league. It's Arsenal. As George Graham says, it's our history. It's fashionable to batter Arsenal. People hate Arsenal. It's our history. People hate us. They hate us because they ain't us. It's as simple as that. And we have to deal with that. And this is why I talk about taking the referee out of games. And I know people don't like that phrase, but that is what I feel. I feel that even though we've got something that we shouldn't have to worry about, we shouldn't have to worry about the referee making mistakes consistently against us and seemingly giving, kind of like decisions in favour, allegedly, to the opposition as opposed to, playing it more evenly. We need to be taking these decisions as much as we can out of the referee's hands so we don't have players kicking the ball away, so that we don't make silly decisions, silly challenges when we're on yellow cards. Like, we shouldn't. We just shouldn't. And when we get chances, we need to take them. When those chances come, like they did against Brighton, even when we're down to 10 men, we have to take those chances. When Gabriel gets a header from a corner that he should score, he gets 2 of them, he puts 1 away, he should have 2 goals. It's mad to be critical of Gabriel slightly, but Gabriel should score the first one. He absolutely should score the first one. So if we take those chances, we're talking about maybe Arsenal being on 15 points instead of 11 points at the moment. And that could be the difference come the end of the season. You know, I have far more criticism towards our players than I will do about referees at the end of the day, because it's in our own hands. Our own quality is what got us to where we've got. How good we are is where we are. You know, and we need to take the chances that come and fall our way. Shannon says, a message I got from a Liverpool fan is refs are on high alert when reffing Arsenal, as they are always using tactics to slow down games. Of course they are. And by the way, we do. Like there's no beating around the bush. Like we do play the dark arts. We have been doing that. Yesterday, like Sunday's game, Rare goes down, not injured in that moment. He does get an injury toward the end of the game, which obviously sees him limp off. But the moment he goes down in the second half, that moment he goes down is just to create a scenario, in my opinion, for Arteta to speak to the team. That is it. Martinelli goes down with cramp. I personally think that there's dark arts in that. The taking of the free kick, of the goal kicks, etc. It is worth pointing out Arsenal have the second slowest time to turn around goal kicks in the league. The team that has the slowest time to turn around is Man City. And this isn't to say that no one else does it, by the way. This isn't me saying that no other team doesn't waste time. We do it more than average. I think that's not a surprising thing to say, or kind of a highly critical thing to say. Arsenal are doing it more than the average team does. But Man City do it as well. Like Man City have been one of the best teams at waste time. I think it was Pep Guardiola said after the game, we do it. I think he did it in his post-match press conference, in his post-match interview with Sky. I think he talked about it. He was like, we do it. It's just part and parcel of the game. But Arsenal have had to be a bit more savvy recently. But I do get fan frustration when people think it's we're getting picked on, because I do think we do. I do think we get picked on. I absolutely think that we get scrutinised far more than any other team. So both can exist. Absolutely. We are definitely a team that uses the dark arts and wastes a bit more time than the average side in the Premier League. But at the same time, I do feel like we are overly scrutinised on it compared to other sides that do it as much, if not more than us, such as Manchester City. So both can exist. Yeah. I do feel like sometimes when I have conversations with Arsenal fans, especially in our community, because we're a very positive community, that I sometimes get into a position where someone left a comment the other day saying that like they're being compared to some of the most negative people out there, just because I had criticisms in the podcast with Sophie and James. You can criticize. There's this line, and we kind of like blur this line sometimes between either being overly positive for some, or even if we do any criticism whatsoever, it crosses a line for others. This spectrum of views that we can have just blurs the line for some people. I don't really get it. I hate the toxic positivity of some, and I hate even more the toxic abuse of others. They are the two ends of the spectrum. You can be toxically positive without question. And by that, I mean that you feel Arsenal are beyond question. And I don't think that's a healthy position to be in. And then the other end of the spectrum, which is for me a far worse end of the spectrum to exist, of course, which is just the horrible abusers that are just disgusting, terrible people. So there's those two ends of the spectrum. We sit more towards that other end of, the positive side, but certainly not into the toxically positive end, because I do believe that if you need to be critical, you can be critical. And I don't think there is ways in which that Arsenal should always be defended or always be found to have an excuse for. That's not where I personally would sit. So that's where I am. Biko says, Tom, what makes it worse is some of our own fans will support such because of their seeming divine right for Arsenal to win trophies, refusing to acknowledge the work done by Arteta. Yeah, and that's more towards that other end of the spectrum. I think the whole raise your standards. Arsenal are one of the biggest teams in the world. We should have won trophies by now. I'll never get on this because I appreciate sport. I appreciate competition. I appreciate that everyone has as equal of a right to win something as much as anybody else. Arsenal have spent a lot of money, yes, but they've not spent as much money as Manchester City since Pep Guardiola took over. That's the reality. They haven't been able to build their squad. They don't have an ongoing alleged investigation into alleged, I'm using that word a lot today, breaches into financial fair play. Like, we don't have that going on at the moment, and that's what we're up against, a team that is being investigated and is currently going through the system regarding those alleged breaches. So, it's like Arsenal have no divine right to win anything. Neither do any other club. And we haven't spent money that I would turn around and say that gives us any more divine right than any other team either. You often see these things like Arteta spent 600 million, Arteta spent 700 million, Arteta spent... And I'm like, yeah, cool. So what? Like, we haven't spent as much as the team that we're trying to beat, ultimately. Like, we haven't spent as much as them. So why is money even coming into it? What we've achieved, and it's not only that, but you think about how much money Man City have spent since Pep Guardiola took over. That's money that was spent on a team that he inherited that included Vincent Kompany, Sergio Aguero, Kevin De Bruyne. Like, think about the players that Pep Guardiola inherited. Arteta inherited Mustafi, with respect to Mustafi, but that's what we inherited. That's what was at the club when he took over. He took over a fractured dressing room that had had money spent on it very poorly. Yes, there was some quality players in it, like, Ozil and Aubameyang, but there were issues with those players that he obviously dealt with. And as a result, we have seen progression because of the way that we've built and changed and overhauled our squad. So I always find it really strange when you see commentators or pundits or other content creators talking about how much money Arsenal have spent. Arsenal have had to spend that money. And they've spent it bloody well. The only way that we really complain about Arsenal spending is on Fabio Vieira. That's really the only player that anyone really points to that we spent a lot of money on, a sizable chunk of money, with a question mark against it. If you look at the money that Arsenal have spent on players down the years, and the players that Arsenal brought in for significant... I know we've done this before, and I know that some people listening to me, Tom, you've talked about this. And I know I've talked about this, but it's Wednesday. So I'm talking about it again, right? So you look at the players we spent money on. Declan Rice, brilliant signing. Kai Havertz, surprised everyone. Jurrien Timber looks an absolute steal at 35 million quid. David Raya now looks like one of the best goalkeepers, not just in the league, but in the world. And we only spent 30 million quid on him. Gabriel Jesus, of course, I think raised the level. Yes, he's had his injury issues, but I still wouldn't say that deal was a miss, because his arrival in 2022 coincided with Arsenal becoming title challengers, which is not something people expected. And the same, I think, goes for Alexander Zinchenko. We've outgrown those players, but we've spent money on players to outgrow those players. They still took us forwards. I don't think those signings could be questioned, those two of Zinchenko and Jesus, even though they weren't of the level of Rice, weren't at the level of Trossard, £27 million. Kivior brought us depth, started in a 0-0 against Man City last season for 20 million quid. Jorginho, £12 million of pure Champions League winning quality that has come and provided depth and got a man of the match performance against Liverpool at home in a season game that we absolutely had to win. Ben White, England's best right back that isn't in the England team, 50 million quid well spent. Martin Odegaard, best player in the team, in my opinion, one of the best players in the world right now, and probably the best creative player in the world behind Kevin De Bruyne, and only cost us £32 million. Aaron Ramsdale raised the level of the goalkeeping position and led us on a pathway to the goalkeeper that we have now. £24 million plus add-ons up to 30 million that we definitely didn't get as far as. Tomiyasu cost less than £20 million, provided very decent depth, and started again at Manchester City, I think, last season. Of course, started against Liverpool and has played some really big games for us that's got us big moments and big points. And I think Tomiyasu is a depth player. Will move on because of his injuries, but I can't question that signing for less than £20 million. But then we get to the start of Arteta's tenure. Lokonga, Tavares, they didn't work out, but they cost us a combined 20 million quid between the two of them, and we haven't suffered as a result of that. Thomas Partey, £45 million, been one of our better midfielders when he's been available to us, of course, and obviously when he's on form has been one of the best players in the Premier League for his position. Injuries have been annoying, but of course the season that he played more than 30 games for us coincided with us having one of our best title runs that we had available to us. And had he been more available for us perhaps last season, that might have been the difference between us winning and not winning the league. Gabriel Magalhaes, 24 million quid. My goodness me, what a signing he's been. 24 million quid Gabriel cost. And he has become one of the best defenders in the world under Mikel Arteta's coaching and tutelage. So how on earth can anyone question our recruitment when all that they've got as ammunition is Tavares, Vieira, Lokonga, and players that we signed at the start like Willian, Pablo Mari, and Cedric? If you really, at this point, are questioning the way in which Arsenal recruit players and spend money on players when this is what we've done and this is the squad we've built, I don't know what to tell you. I really struggle with it. I really, really do. Can we spend more money? Yes. Will we spend more money? Yes. Could we have spent more money in the summer? Maybe. I question on who. With the benefit of hindsight, it might look like that Gyökeres would have been a great signing. We may still sign him next summer, but I can understand why that they didn't and they were more resistant. But we still, in a summer where I genuinely thought it was going to be near impossible to raise the ceiling of this group, managed to bring in Calafiori, who's already scored in the biggest game of Arsenal's history, arguably at this point, with an amazing finish, and of course looks like a really good player to play in multiple defensive positions. And I think potentially could take on that left back role. And you never know. Timber may even compete with Ben White on the right hand side. He had a great game at right back against City. And then you've got Mikel Arteta, of course, who's not yet played, and that's a really exciting prospect. A really exciting prospect. So, yeah, I really cannot wait to see where on earth Arsenal and Arteta and Edu's critics go next with it, because they are clutching at straws, and that cup of straws is getting very, very thin indeed. Amira says players are punished if they make the wrong split-second decision, but referees are backed 99% of the time, regardless. If it's not dangerous, then there's no harm in just issuing a warning to the player. What I will say to this point is that if a referee does make an actual mistake and that they are found to have made an error and that the VAR disagrees with them or the retrospective action of what the VAR have made, they do face punishment. They do miss game weeks. They do get taken off of games. Think Lee Mason, for example, at the Brentford game. It does happen. But these are like subjective decisions. Some of these are subjective. And while we have an opinion on those decisions and we think they're wildly incorrect, as the rules state, and I hate this phrase, but as the letter of the law states, Trossard was rightly sent off and Declan Rice was rightly sent off. But the rules are stupid. I've said this before. Like, for me, it's the rule makers that I have my issues with. The rule makers are where my main griefs lie with. They're the people I think that should be facing the most scrutiny. Yes, referees should still face scrutiny for their implementation and inconsistency of those rules. But the rule makers for me are the bigger ones that I have my issues with, because I just think they've ruined the game with the rules that they've brought into this whole sport. Lib Gunner says, Tom, is it true that Moreno is back next week? No idea, mate. Not heard that. Don't know. I'd be surprised, but I like surprises. I really do like surprises. New Music says even Wenger signed Jeffers, Stepanovs, etc. Not bad players, but we won't judge him by those signings. We think of the signings he made of Henry and Sol Campbell, etc. And this is the point. Like, anyone still using Willian or Vieira or Tavares or Lokonga just exposes themselves. Whenever you see anyone having a debate about Edu and Arteta signings and they start bringing up Tavares or Lokonga or Willian or Marie or Cedric, you know that they are absolutely in some mad hat world where they are just ignoring hundreds of £1 million of success in the transfer market, where the money that they're talking about equates to such a small percentage of the brilliant success that we have had in the market. Emmanuel says, hi, Tom. Love the show. Going to the Emirates with my son for the first time in years tonight. Where do you recommend we go for the best pies pre-game? It's a great question, because it used to be Pinebury Corner, and it was a ritual of mine before games to go and get pies. Of course, these days I enjoy the privileges of being in the press lounge and the food that's available there. I love early kickoffs, my Emirates breakfast. But I have to say, I'd love to get some suggestions to Emmanuel. So if you are, of course, available in the area to provide them. But yeah, pre-match pies have not been something that I have frequented since before the pandemic. And before the pandemic, of course, Pinebury Corner was the place to go. And so sadly shut down. I'm really gutted that it's not, for whatever reason. I'm sure it's something completely out of their control, but sadly has not returned as of yet. Hopefully, maybe one day there is a Lincoln Park style return out of nowhere. Would be great. But yes, I'd love to hear some suggestions in the chat. And Emmanuel, if I can get you that, I will try and get you that. And hopefully I'm leaning heavily on our community here to provide that information for you. Dwarfren says, if the team said Arsenal used dark arts, then I will use the dark arts on the team to accuse 5 games in a row. I see where you're going with it. Black magic is Dolphins going for, clearly. Assam says, this Moreno used to have injuries with Newcastle back then. I hope he works really well with us. I mean, I can have a quick look at Mikel Moreno's injury record. This is a really innocuous problem, by the way. Like, this isn't like a hidden issue that he's had that has resurfaced. He had a player land on him and break his shoulder. Like, it's very different. Last season, he missed 2 games because of a calf issue. The season before, he missed just 4 games. The season before that, he missed 6 games. The season before that, he missed a few more because of a knee injury. But he's missing like a handful of games a season, right? He's missed, 3, 4 fast so far. Hopefully, he's back soon. But this isn't like an injury that was something that would have kind of been highlighted in a medical or in a history that we should have picked up. So that's it. Right, let's. Morgie says, get to the game an hour earlier and get a pie, which is decent, and a pint for £7. Of course, there is. I think they're doing it today. I'm not 100% sure. But if you do go early to the stadium, they have been doing these things where you get things cheaper. So, but do bear that in mind. I don't know if they're doing it tonight, but Morgie seems to think they are. So that's a potential option for you, Emmanuel. Rob says, how are minutes added on calculated? The second half had 7 minutes more when the ball was in play for more than any other of the first half. It seems bizarre. How do they justify it? Do the PGMO have to show their workings? Of course, yet this whole 35 minutes thing has been touted around. It's worth pointing out that the 10 minutes that the ball wasn't in play was because of quite heavy time wasting. So yeah, that's one to consider. Right, I think we're going to wrap the show up there. Thank you so much as always for listening and tuning in. It's heavily appreciated. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Enjoy yourselves. Stay safe. Stay well. Stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.